Always, right? So let me just begin with Doc Millinger. He's representing Clarion Capital Partners. And Doc was actually the first one in the entire world who got a degree in entrepreneurship, the first one. He is, of course, investing in companies, and I have one specific question for him today before we represent the rest of the panel one by one. Doc, follow the money. Where does the money go right now into entrepreneurship? Who are we investing in?
Well, in terms of who's being invested, it's actually one of the big problems, I think, because, and we'll hear from some of the other panelists, the venture capital industry, which is where a lot of people think about, is really concentrated dramatically in just 3 states in the country. And so when you think about where's the money really coming from, it's actually not the venture capital industry. It's actually coming from more angel investors, family, friends, angel communities that exist. And so as part of the job when you're all talking about what's the big ideas, I think how to create the capital pools in towns, in cities, in rural and urban type of areas is a big challenge, because it does take capital in many cases to get companies off the table. I think, though, in the biggest area, and just kind of put some ideas out for you, that needs to be focused on is something even beyond that, which is how do you create the incentives from a policy perspective for capital to be made available. And I think that the government, with things like opportunity zones, which are really hot right now, is one great policy change and tax change that was created that's going to unlock enormous amounts of capital. The ones that I think people need to focus on now is looking at the capital gains rates in terms of based on risk. So if you own a share of IBM for a year and a day, or you make an entrepreneurial investment, paying the same long-term capital gains rate just doesn't make a lot of sense. So things in that nature would be one. And the second area that I think needs to be looked at is that the venture capital and private equity industry actually owes its existence to 2 lines of text in a federal regulation. And it was called the Pension Protection Act of 1978. And through that act, it allowed pension trustees to not be responsible for one investment, to be responsible for a portfolio. And that caused in the 1980s and 90s for the venture capital and private equity industry to take off, because pension money became the biggest money. The problem is 20 years later, 401ks became the largest source of capital, but 401ks were not able to invest in venture capital, for example, because of the accredited investor rules. And so I think one of the really big ideas would be for the government to make changes to allow the individual investors to more easily get into the alternative investment space, which is what the pensioners have benefited from over the last 40 years.
Thank you, Doc. I have a question for you all. How many of you have actually invested in some kind of company, either with your own money or with your company's money? Yeah, you see? It's happening. Thank you so much. We'll get back to Doc. He's an endless amount of inspiration in this and can go on and on for years. I mean, you're so passionate about this. David Dalton, it's a huge honor to have you in this panel. You are the chairman and the CEO of Health Resources, Inc. You're the founder. I'm happy you're sitting down because you will not believe this number. He's the founder of over 40 companies. And he's right now on the board, or the chairman, of 6 companies. And he was the first black executive in the chain drug industry. I'm Danish, we don't use drugs, so I can't even pronounce it. Anyway, but the thing is, that's really interesting, and you are a Hall of Fame CEO, and I couldn't wait to ask you this question, and I hope you will answer. What is the DNA of you? Since you can start 40 companies, can we just bottle you and give a little, a little sip to each one of us? I mean, 40 companies, that's the most impressive portfolio I've ever heard of. David, what is the secret? I know it's a big question, but
Well, let me bring this down to earth a little bit, because our target is middle market, everyday people. My resume is not to impress everybody, and I'm not on an ego trip, but, 3 Halls of Fame, Senatorial Medal of Freedom, building multi-companies, some of them at early stages, just projects. Because I was vice president of Rite Aid Corporation, we built a 5,000 store chain, and we wanted to make sure that is zones that are intrapreneur and entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs work for companies that can create opportunities for people. An entrepreneur might be the person that did Gmail under Google. It might be the person that did PlayStation with Sony. So from the standpoint of how you start a company, what you do, and how you get to the successes that are created, in my situation, I started a company really from the standpoint of my first company being Health Resources, which is today the 23rd largest Black-owned company according to Black Enterprise. I have Pharmacy Services, which is a mail service company, Wellness Teladoc, which is virtual healthcare made up of physicians and pharmacists. I have Wellness RX, which is CARF-accredited mental substance abuse clinics that creates a standard for the CBD world that's coming to the Medicaid, Medicare, and other insurance play world. It all leads, from my perspective, we're headed to one company roll-up in a public company that's really a penny stock company, and it's penny stock because I want everyone in this room to be able to invest in it. It's not going to be a 3,200 stock situation. It's an everyday people stock. And since it's a public company, I want to tell you, Univet Conglomerate, Inc. is a specialty pharmaceutical company focused on medical marijuana, CBD, methadone, Suboxone for the addiction support withdrawal and pain management through our transdermal patch delivery system to help alleviate the opioid present in the world today. Bottom line is to change the world and wealth creation. Why do you create so many companies, and what do you do? It's called passion. So whatever you decide to be your passion is going to translate into success. If the DNA, you're driven to do what you want to do to help people. So the standpoint of why I start so many companies and why I do certain things a different way, it's all timing, it's all technology, it's all access to that opportunity to help people and change the world.
Thank you, David. It's very impressive. So if you're driven by CPD, I can pronounce that. Maybe I should go that direction. The thing is, people really need to be motivated by passion and not the paycheck. But that's easier said than done, right? I mean, that is a huge game changer, at least for the entrepreneurs I know. They put their house at risk, sometimes their health at risk to start up their business, but a lot of them succeed too. Thank you, David. Jeff, Cherry, if there's anyone in the room who knows something about all the stages and phases that a company go through, it's you. I mean, if I look at your resume, you have 25 years of executive leadership behind you, and probably also ahead of you, I hope. You are a hedge fund manager, entrepreneur, designer, educator, consultant, and you have helped I don't know how many companies to go from a startup to a middle market company. You think of incubation, you think about conscious capitalism, and you are very obsessed about, and you also know a lot about how to pick the right ideas, or should I say how to pick the right people. Because to become a successful entrepreneur, it's not something clearly you can go to the doctor and get a blood work done and then we can tell you that you're going to be a success. It's much more complicated than that. Jeff, honestly speaking, how to grow a company from being just a startup into a healthy, growing, serious business? What is the secret behind that?
Easy question.
I know.
First of all, why'd you put me after him? 40 I guess I look around, there's nowhere to hide up here, but that was mean. I'm not sure if I like you anymore. So yeah, how do you help entrepreneurs get from zero to scale, as I think is the question you're asking, as we were talking about earlier, and I think as the good doctor just said, we focus a lot on teams and on people, right? How many good ideas have you guys heard of? Someone says, hey, I got this idea. Sounds like a great idea. Probably will work, and then they don't do anything with it. Strewn on the side of the road. Someone else picks it up and makes it happen, right? So ideas are a dime a dozen, but people who can execute ideas are really the sort of, that's the corner of the realm for us. So we're always looking for teams of people that we think understand the way the world is changing. And you talked a lot about conscious capitalism. That's probably one of the most important things that we do, is that we, if you guys all heard Raj this morning, Raj is one of my dear friends, is also an academic director for my accelerator, and really changed my life when I met him I guess, almost 20 years ago, talking about this idea that the winning companies of the future were not going to be those companies that focus myopically on shareholders. Rather, they're going to be those companies that understand how to create value for all of their stakeholders. So when we're looking at investing, we're looking for people who understand that. And if they understand that, especially where we are, because we're usually the first professional money in to any company, so they're so early, we know that their ideas are likely to change or pivot, as we say in the industry. So we're really looking for people who understand the nature of our society and what we collectively think is important about cooperating and working with each other. So I think a lot of what we do that sort of help companies get from zero to scale is helping them understand that it's not just about the money.
Okay, so money is not the answer. So from being just the founder to start hiring the first people and get the first seed money and pre-seed money in, what is the number one, if you should say, the number one reason why companies then die? I mean, a lot of company dies from the founder to the first hire. Why?
Well, I think that, probably the number one reason that companies die is that because they weren't solving the problem that anyone cared about, right? I mean, literally at the end of the day, we talked about this before, what's the most important thing, right? And this is not new. Peter Drucker, back in the 1920s, said, companies don't make money, they make shoes or eyeglasses or chairs. The purpose of a company is not to create value for shareholders. The purpose of a company is to create a customer. So lots of times we see companies fail because they're like, look, I got this great idea. It's a great idea. Look, it's a solution looking for a problem, right? That's a great idea, but nobody has that problem.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
You actually
Thank you
have
so
to ask the question to yourself, who's actually going to give you the money? This is where the customer comes in. People just have these great ideas, and there's a saying that it's always going to take twice as long, and it's going to be twice as hard to go from where you start to actually a successful business. And people create these hockey stick. I've seen a couple thousand business plans over the years. I've never seen one that doesn't have a projections that looks like this, ever. Everybody's going to.
Because then you don't invest in them if there's not going to be a high return in the future.
But what a lot of people don't focus on is they always focus on the income statement. They don't focus on the cash flow statement.
It's true. It's true. Thank you so much.
But at the same time, I got to say, you have to focus on your people. Sears Roebuck, Kodak, a lot of things are happening in the industry today because they didn't pay attention to their people.
Yeah, people and customers. I think we can agree on that. Dr. Ettore Kondo, I mean, it's difficult to make your resume short because you've been rewarded as one of the greatest thinkers in the world. You are recognized by the Young Global Leader Prize by the World Economic Forum. You are professor of strategy and competitiveness, and you are former president of INCAI Business School in Costa Rica. You're from Ecuador, but you are Latin American in your heart. I love that. And now you're running Earth University. And the thing is, I always wanted to ask you, we are always talking about tech entrepreneurs and, who should we invest in and who's gonna be the winners of the future. When you think about your students and the entrepreneurs that you are creating as we speak, what are we missing here? What is the missing piece in this picture when we talk about entrepreneurs?
So first of all, thanks for the invitation to the Hope Global Forum. And indeed, there are no women in the panel, but I think we are balanced, having Sulaima and the six of us, so we are in good equilibrium.
She might be winning.
Absolutely. I'm trying to be nice to us, too. So I think we are into a theme here, because I think, not every company has to be Uber, though Uber does, that target a solution to something, but but there are so many needs in the world. So the first thing, Earth University is based in Costa Rica, so I'm a foreigner in this panel, but I find that our challenges are actually more common than we may think at first. We have students from Latin America and Africa and the Caribbean, so it's really a very diverse South population, and we train them as entrepreneurs first and foremost. And the first thing they have to do is actually go out and find a product that solves a problem. Now, 80% of them come from underprivileged backgrounds, so they have a very good sense of serious social problems, especially in rural areas. We're an agricultural university. So that's the first step, connecting to reality, coming down to earth, as you were saying. And that's one of the things that we're missing in terms of new entrepreneurs, rural entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. In Latin America and Africa, in the bottom, 20% of income distribution in our populations, most households are headed by women. Women know the needs, social needs, productivity needs, of human needs of many, the most needed, the most needy population. So bringing them to become or empower them as entrepreneurs, I think, is what's missing. What Earth University does is take all these kids and force them or put them through an entrepreneurship track. Every one of them is not an option. And we give them money, we lend them money. And this is a thing you learn by doing. And when you say 2000s, that's where your expertise comes from, not from books, but from the practice of looking at these ideas and looking at these entrepreneurs. So I think part of what we need is that, and to partner with universities. And there are famous universities in the US for entrepreneurship. The big question I would ask is, again, how many women, how many rural, how many minorities are represented here? I find this forum fascinating. It's my first time here, because I don't feel that minority in a way, right? Being Latino or the foreigner, but what I'm saying? Like here, minorities are the majority, and that's what we need. And so I think that's it, right? I mean, connecting to the problems, bringing the ones who know the problems best to be part of the startups that would address those issues with solutions.
So not everyone has to come out of MIT. Some of them also have to come out of other universities.
Earth University, for sure.
Earth University, yeah, I like that. Yeah, maybe you should celebrate. Okay, so I don't know about you, but in Denmark we love to blame and shame the politicians. They're the reason for everything that goes bad. And nothing changed, I think. So Jaron K. Smith is a special assistant. Oh no, you were actually just promoted. But you work with the President of the United States of America. I never said that before. That's my first time on domestic policy. I don't know much about this administration. I read about it, but I don't know much about it. I know for sure who the president is. I know he's a great entrepreneur, right? So what kind of politics are coming out of Washington? Is there a solution on its way? Are we already doing enough and the right things? Jaron, you are here for taking all the bullets for politics. Take it.
Well, first let me say, I want to thank you for the wonderful introduction. These guys have resumes, you listing off, and it was like, oh, here's this guy in politics. God bless America, though, No.
Okay, I can say actually you are the most senior black in the White House, right?
Geez.
So I will give you that.
It's so funny.
I mean, coming from a brown person, I can say that, I think, right?
So you want to hear something funny?
Okay.
As a nickname in college, they called me Black, right?
Oh.
And so Washington Post wrote an article called Black in the White House, and they had me on the cover. They was like, who's snitching on Jaron? Who's talking to the press? Anyway, I'll say this, it's an honor to be here, to sit in front of you and get to listen and learn, because at the end of the day, I think the government can do a part in setting up an ecosystem for the private sector to kind of have robust markets and create value. And so it's always great to be in a room full of entrepreneurs and learn what needs to happen in order to create those ecosystems. And so I did spend some years as an entrepreneur. I used to be a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch and Northwestern Mutual, and I ran my own advisory business and private client. And it really taught me a lot of instincts about, creating value, and penciling out and having a good bottom line, servicing customers and things like that. What we've created with the help of ingenuity of the private sector, there's a guy, Sean Parker. Everybody knows who Sean Parker is. Sean Parker started Napster and then was one of the founders of Facebook, created this organization called the Economic Innovation Group. Economic Innovation Group is important because they were the think tank that undergirded the Invested in Opportunity Act, which creates opportunity zones. And so the notion or the problem that they were trying to solve goes back to what Doug mentioned earlier, that the ecosystems for venture capitalist investment is only in like 3 cities. And they were wondering how could they create new ecosystems in areas that weren't economically dynamic. And they wrote a whole paper on economic dynamism, and what it is how much business startups are happening in certain localities. And they found in our most distressed communities there was a correlation with no business startups and poverty. And so the notion that undergirded opportunity zones was let's create new ecosystems in some of our most distressed communities and allow for entrepreneurs in diverse communities to also be a part of industries of the future, which is extremely important. And due to Senator Tim Scott's leadership, we were able to get it as a part of tax reform. And since then, we've worked closely with Treasury and the private sector and also the public sector to create the right vehicle that can thrive in a way that would allow for that ecosystem building. But I don't think that system could work independently on its own. In order to have that robust nature, it does take some public sector involvement. And so as a result of that, aside from just the economic development tool in itself, which is private sector led, we've created the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council and have a whole work group focused on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship dollars being focused into opportunity zones. It's overlaps with hub zones and the 8A projects, as well as MBDA, minority business development. So we're using all of our tools there, also at Commerce, to not only allow for more robust business startups in those localities, but allowing for businesses that live in those localities to also scale. But I think what's the most important piece with the industries of the future, and to the point that you mentioned, is how do we create that ecosystem partnership with universities or minority serving institutions that are 50 of them are in opportunity zones for HBCUs? How do we create that partnership that would allow for the federal government to spend this $150 billion in research dollars into those institutions? Because many people don't know, when it comes to tech and healthcare, the federal government funds a lot of that ecosystem build. They'll fund a university, they'll use those research dollars and then spin off into a small business. And then we get a lot of innovations for the future. And it's extremely important that we create that ecosystem, because in order to be competitive in the 21st century, it's almost a national security imperative that we get diverse thoughts that isn't just in those 3 localities, to across the spectrum of ideas throughout the country. And so that's what we're working on. We're doing convenings around the country. We're actually, SBA is working with Clayton County, I think in 3 weeks here, on some business accelerator ecosystem matchmaking summits. And we'll do a lot of matchmaking summits as well, because with all this capital, businesses want to know what are good businesses to invest in opportunity zones. And though we can't pick winners and losers, we can facilitate a conversation. But it's a lot of work being done there, and I'll just stop there.
Yeah. See, we are recognizing that a lot of things are coming out of Washington on this topic. And you might really want to listen over the next 1 hour because they are coming up with a lot of great ideas that I guess they will want you to take back to Washington.
But
Okay.
we shouldn't stop there because there's one important thing that this room needs to know. Opportunity funds is going to be the most exciting thing that's hitting the market. Whenever you hear somebody say billions, it catches my attention. So in the opioid epidemic, UNIVAC is targeting $100 billion that the president has announced. When you talk opportunity funds, it's going to affect every community. And I don't want you to go away without getting the education through the universities or however you need to get it about what the opportunity funds are all about. But more importantly than that, around this room, there's called social capital. Meet these people, all these experts up here, the great people who've done great things. Come and talk to them across the table. Talk to them. Don't be scared to go from one table to the other because you don't know that person. Opportunity is right here. Social capital is probably the more significant than access to capital. So don't miss that opportunity.
And that's extremely important because the reference to the double bottom line is extremely important. I mean, many of us come from communities that we care about and we want to do something to change it, but you can also make it pencil out where it's profitable, but also doing some social good. And so we want to help create those ecosystems and figuring out the best way to leverage our resources and partner with local and state leaders to figure out how we can unite as a public sector to allow for that business creation.
Thank you so much. To be the last one is actually a good thing because we can end on a high note. Daryl Green, I've been excited to. That was not an insult. That was just a joke, but anyway. Daryl, I've been excited to represent you because you are business acquisition manager at Wells Fargo Bank. It's not my bank, but I think it's going to become my bank.
Yay.
Because he's a salesperson, I have the biggest admiration for salespeople because everything is sales. And he's been rewarded with I don't know how many awards for sales and business and whatever. You have over 20 years of executive background in the financial service industry. And since you're representing a bank, actually one of the biggest banks in US, I actually always wanted to know. I remember when I was 18, I walked into my bank, my local bank, and I asked for a bank loan so I could start my first company, my first of many, and they refused to give me a loan. So I started up cleaning in the nights, dishwashing, and I saved my money, and I eventually started up my first company with my saved money. Meanwhile, my white schoolmates, they walked just into the bank and get their first loans, and I couldn't even get a penny. And I'm thinking, Daryl, is this fair? Are you really giving the loans to the people who deserve the loans? Or are you giving the loans to the people who, probably not, the safe bet or whatever? Like, are you taking enough risks is probably my question.
That's a great question.
Okay.
I would just share that I think three things are important when you're trying to engage with the bank. Number one, engagement, right? You want to make sure that you've got a connection with someone. I think it's always important to start with where you bank personally. Where you bank personally, they can introduce you to someone on the business side, right? So being engaged and making that connection is always a great help. Another thing that I think is super duper important is to have a business plan. Doug talked about it a little bit. A business plan is a really great tool for entrepreneurs because what it does is it really does three things. It tells the reader where you've been, tells them where you're at, and it tells them where you're trying to go. So engagement is super duper important. Whether you're joining the chamber, attending events like this, that's important. The second thing I would say is get educated. Get educated on your industry, whatever that industry may be, whether you're using resources like the Small Business Administration, the SBA, or an SBDC, you want to get educated on what types of credit facilities are out there for your particular industry. You may find that some industries are really relying on more angel investing, whereas some other industries may be more traditionally aligned with what banks will lend against. So that's the second thing, getting educated. The third thing I would say is empower yourselves, right? There are tons of free tools and resources out there. Everybody's got a free business plan on their site. The SBA has one, Wells Fargo has one, Bank of America has one. There are marketing tools out there. There are videos on how to start up a business. Whether you're a medical professional or a landscaper, educate yourselves as much as you possibly can and empower yourselves with tools and resources. Now, once you've kind of done some of those things, you're going to be much more prepared to engage with the financial institution. And so if you go back to what I said originally, start with where you bank personally, right? Where you may have your mortgage or your car payment or your car finance through. Have them introduce you to someone. You go out and you meet that person, right? You don't want anything on that first visit. I just want to get to know you as a person, want you to get to know me. Then I would strongly recommend you put together a business plan. You make another follow-up appointment with that same individual you met and say, hey, we met about 90 days ago. I told you I had an entrepreneurial dream, or this is where my company is, and now I'd like to just share the business plan with you to get your feedback and input, right? So you're not asking anything on that second visit. Now you've got a relationship that you started to build with somebody at a financial institution where you have been doing your business. The third visit is then when you come back after they've given you feedback on your business plan, you've made those adjustments, now you come back and say, hey, we've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit better. Thank you for the feedback on my plan. I've made some changes and tweaks. I've gone out and educated myself on exactly what I need in order to make my business grow and prosper. And then you begin to have the dialogue. I will tell you that over 90% of the people who follow that type of process typically will walk away with some type of financing. May not be as much as you want, but there will be a much more receptive audience. And when it comes to lending money or helping businesses get started, we are, as bankers, that's what we want to do. We really don't want to look at color. And so there's a misperception out there that if you look a certain way, but really what it is you may have come to the table without a business plan that looked professional. You may have come with an entrepreneurial idea that we've heard, a great idea, but don't have a plan to execute. And so these are some of the small things that you can do in advance to ensure that you have a receptive audience that is going to hear you.
You know, one of the things, to go to the business plan I've always loved to joke with is that so many people spend a lot of time creating these incredibly elaborate business plans. The secret is that not one of them has ever come true. Business plans are great frameworks.
You don't have to agree up here. That's okay.
No, but the thing I think people have to realize is that entrepreneurship's a journey. And it's a journey about failing, and the best thing is about failing fast. Because the likelihood that your business, if it succeeds, looks at all like the original business plan is literally as close to zero as it's going to come. The second thing is the likelihood that if you become successful and become known as an entrepreneur, the likelihood that your first business was what you became known for is also close to zero. So it's a journey. It's about taking steps, failing, going on to the next one. And there's a great saying, which is businesses or ventures will fail, but an entrepreneur will never fail because you're just going to go on to the next one.
Yeah. That's a really, really, really important point. But I also want to piggyback on that a little bit to talk about then, if we know the business plan is going to be wrong, why do one, right? But there is a reason to do one. So we always say the same thing. We see a projection. Someone shows me a projection. There's only one thing I know about that projection for sure, that it's wrong. That's the only thing I know for sure, that it's absolutely wrong. So what am I really looking for? I'm looking for the assumptions that the person made to come up with those projections, so I can understand whether they have the mindset of an entrepreneur, right? That those ideas that you put forth, that the reason that you built that projection, does it seem to make sense? Does it hold together? I know it's not going to end up that way, but I'm looking for your thought process. I'm an architect by training, right? When you graduate from architectural school, you're not an architect. You're taught to learn how to think like a designer. So I'm looking, when I look at a business plan, to see, is this person thinking like an entrepreneur? Does the story hold together? or is it just, smoke and mirrors, right?
Let me just ask the audience, how many of you in here are entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and, yeah, okay. Fair amount of, okay. How does an entrepreneur think? What is the DNA of a thinking mindset of an entrepreneur?
Well, I think that, you just hit upon a lot of it, right? Businesses fail, entrepreneurs don't, right?
Yeah.
So really, if you anybody knows Gary Vaynerchuk, said, I was on the panel once and someone said, what's the biggest mistake you see entrepreneurs make? So the biggest mistake is they think they're entrepreneurs and they're really not, right? So they don't have that. You have to have a really interesting relationship with failure if you want to be an entrepreneur, because we know that you're going to fail often. And if you're not comfortable with that ambiguity, that's sort of one of the things we look for as well, right?
Well, the other thing that goes along with this is that, the whole concept of is somebody an entrepreneur, and it's if we believe the fact that they're going to probably do a number of companies over time, then one of the things that entrepreneurs always like to talk about is, it's my baby. I created this company, it's my baby. And the reality is, it's actually the worst thing to think about. I actually tell entrepreneurs to think of yourself as a steward, not as a parent. And the reason for that is because you're most likely going to either sell it or it's not going to survive. And people have to realize that there's no such thing as having something forever, because if nothing else, we're all going to die at some point. So if the company is going to last for a long time, it's going to go on to stewardship to somebody else.
Doug, excellent note. And yeah, let's give a hand.
But a lot of times with a business plan, you also need a mentor to help with that process. So looking at everybody and what you do, businesses change because technology changes. And with that change, you need someone that has already been through that process in some way or another to guide you from the old school, connect the dots to make it happen for you in a different environment. So a mentor is absolutely critical.
David, that being the last word from you guys for now, you will be back in half an hour for taking more questions. But actually now we want you to work. So look at your table. You're sitting next to amazing people, and now the work has to begin. But there are going to be a few more notes on the group work. You need to explain.
Everyone, can you just listen, please? All right, we have 30 minutes now left. And in the next 30 minutes, we have session leaders for each of the table. And they will be leading the session for you guys. And the idea is to come up with the ideas for each table. We will have one idea for each table, which you need to create at your table. And then we will have each table talk about their ideas. And we'll note it down here. And really, out of all of these tables, some of these tables may have the same ideas, so that's fine. But we will note it down here, and we will take those 5 ideas from here in this session to the Operation Hope. All right? Thank you.
Okay, Mason's taking over.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mason Dalton. I'm actually David Dalton's son. So the idea we came up with is something like this at the Hope Global Forum, where you hold for the next generation. You hold a panel like this where all these brilliant people are, and they can teach the next generation about the framework to entrepreneurship. Most people don't understand what it's like to build a business. But all businesses get passed down, like he said, stewardship. Now, he'll give me, I don't even know how many companies. But if I don't know how to run them, they're going to die. Now, if anybody else has a company out there that they're going to give to their kid, if they don't know the framework in which on the foundation it's built, they can't build it to the next level. So it's going to die. So if we hold a panel like this to teach the next generation just the framework of how to build, run, manage, and succeed in the company, I believe no company will be able to fail. No company will ever die. If they know the framework and they know the foundation and they know how to build upon the framework, what's there else to do? Am I right?
All right, 20 seconds. All right, so I am Sheena. I'm the founder of Financial Parent Academy, and it kind of piggybacks on what he said, but a little bit more deeper. We want mandatory mentorships because if kids are not exposed at an early age about what entrepreneurship is, it's kind of like as an adult, you're going to be at the same pace as somebody who's getting it as a kid. You're not feeling like that you're really getting ahead. So we believe that exposing kids to know what it is, like technical experience, hands-on experience as early as possible, we're going to be able to open up the idea that entrepreneurship is a great route to go because most people, they know doctors, they know lawyers, but nobody's really sitting there teaching them about entrepreneurship, how to be a carpenter, how to do a plumber, doing trade skills like they did back in the day. So really just giving them exposure to what it is that entrepreneurship is and how it can really help their lives.
Good one.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daisy Jones, and I'm with EY Productions. Also, Globally You is our media outlet that we have, which is a show that teaches people regarding entrepreneurship. Now, our table came up with the idea, and speaking to the panel regarding the government assistance and that sort of thing, and we all know it needs to be training. So our concept was that as the government has monies in the hub zones and underdevelopment communities where there are schools, and even here in the situation at Atlanta where you have a HBCU that is on a teetering of going out of business, why not fund that school, build a school, or make it towards entrepreneur teaching, period. When you come to the school, instead of coming and doing your English and trying to figure out your major, when you get to the school, you know what your major is. And if not, if you have an idea, you have a board of people like we're talking to help you find out what it is in you, because we all have something in us. And at Globally You, that's what our show focuses on. If you don't know, if you have a general idea of what it is you need to do, we're here to help you find it out. And the money's as it would a college, but all you're doing is learning what it is to run a business, from the financial aspect of it to the building of your presidents and all of that. So I think that we should take these vacant buildings in schools and universities that are going under and have the government fund them and directly into building entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
Hello, yeah, I guess I got 20 seconds, so I'll make this quick. I think the idea we came up with was coming up with either a public and a private program that would first educate people about what entrepreneurism is. Sometimes people think it's this big lofty thing, but it could be as simple as selling Avon or something like that you could still build a business off of reputable. Aside from that, providing them information on finding out more about different types of entrepreneurial programs like conferences like these. Because I think once people have an interest, they want to know where can they go for support and for education. So really what we're talking about is a program to promote entrepreneurism and then kind of as a pipeline to help direct people to areas of support and education and training that will help support them in their endeavors. So that's our idea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hermance Mitsotsa, and the solution that I've come up with is global workforce development. And so the name of my business is Mbutu Speaks. But besides that, my group, we had several ideas, but one thing that we did all agree upon was the fact that a lot of reasons why businesses fail is because we don't have access to the funding required to be able to scale up our business. So we came up with the idea of possibly having a global network, funding network, that allows individuals who have great business ideas to submit their business plan, and there will be someone or individuals who have already walked, the entrepreneur journey, who can not only give us advice, but tell us where we can get the funding, if not asked to fund the program or the idea itself. And this is something that this will be a portal that not only will allow you to find out what funding resources are out there, but who you can connect with, and also let you know if your business's idea is actually solving a problem.
Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Jones of Lord & Jones Financial. And with my illustrious table, we came up with the idea of socially interactive apprenticeship. Socially interactive apprenticeship. As kings walk with their sons, as queens walk with their daughters, we, as kings and queens of industry, need to walk with our children because they are the future. We can start an apprenticeship program in the schools during the day where we can come in, whether it's on social media, whether it is when we walk in ourselves and we present what our industry is. If you're an architect or an engineer or an advisor or an investor, you will come and teach and train and guide from first grade up what it means to be in that industry and to teach the next generation of industry kings and industry queens.
Good afternoon. I'm Gary Curry, a financial advisor. I want to make this quick, so I got 20 seconds, but we feel that there's the key to entrepreneurship is really having a strong mentor. And what that means is if you ask any highly successful person in their field, no matter what it is, it was somebody in their path that opened up doors and gave them the opportunity so that they can get to that level. So mentors' responsibility is really to facilitate that opportunity for that individual to be able to get to that next level.
Great. Really quick. Good afternoon. Deborah Watts with the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation, but 22 and a half years in marketing and development, but a wonderful table of individuals right here. Could you please stand? Just real quick. I just want to make sure, because it's a team effort, right? It's the team. But and a very diverse mix of individuals and ideas. But the idea that has been going around the room is starting early, right? Starting early is fabulous. Kindergarten came from this table. Also including parents and an ability to incent the parents on making sure that they understand what business is, what entrepreneurship is, and they have an opportunity to be involved in it. And no place, I think, is very successful with one entity that's funding it, and that's government. Sometimes we have to partner with government, right? So let's take advantage of that, build the partnership. This is about the purpose, building a process, and having a payoff for everyone involved. Pipeline. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica McCoy, and I am the founder of Pitch University. And our idea was that it's really critical for us to really understand that we really have a lot of power and influence. And when you're going to organizations to build strategic partnerships, really make sure that you understand the strategy of the organization, because many of these Fortune 500 companies have billions of dollars to invest in minority and women-owned businesses, and many of us are not understanding the strategy of the organization. So our solution is to, one, leverage the tools and resources of tech companies and understand that Fortune 500 companies that existed in the early 1900s are not the same Fortune 500s today because they were not agile. And we all have agile solutions to provide to these corporations to be able to go ahead and gain those strategic partnerships and take advantage of the funding that's out there for us.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Dove, and my partners and I have come up with the strategy to grow the entrepreneurial pipeline through knowledge sharing, relationships, and value creation. We believe that Operation Hope and the Hope Global Forum should partner with local organizations in Atlanta that support and service entrepreneurship to identify 2 streams of concepts. First, the top 3 detractors from entrepreneurial success, and 3, the top 3 contributors to entrepreneurial success. And they should leverage these concepts to create value-add programming that solves problems, provides resources, and enables success at 3 key predefined service levels.
Thank you. Oh my God. So, you know, we could continue and continue for hours, but actually we're running out of time, and due it to respect to the next sessions. But you know, if you have a great idea still, we are still in the room, we'll still make notes. Please come and give it to us because we actually want to know. We have 4 more minutes, and I actually want to hand it over to our amazing panel again. First of all, should we give ourselves a hand for the good work we've done? So the last 3.5 minutes we have left. Any thoughts from the panel of what you've heard so far? Make it short, maybe a final note.
I really think it's wonderful what we heard, but we also need to kick it up a notch. This table right here, I was disappointed I didn't hear a comment, but they brought up the public market. Public market investing is wealth creation. Those investments can help minority companies become majority Fortune 500s. I don't want anyone in this room to leave without thinking about your investment portfolio, the public markets, because in the United States, there's only 3 black-owned, controlled public companies, 2,000 plus other entities, but 3 black-owned public companies. That's absurd in 2019.
I was just going to say really quick. Sorry about that. I was
Don't
going to say
clap, we
really
don't have
quick. I appreciate a lot of the feedback. I did want to say that through the White House Opportunity Revitalization Council, we're creating those ecosystems, and we hope to return. I've also been in some good conversations with John Hope Franklin to see how we can run some of these things down to the ground so that we can teach resources we have, encourage state and localities to also develop a strategy. But I think the conversation just can't stop here. You know, you have to actually put something together and keep running things to the ground to have those ecosystems exist. But we're working with them. Part of the reason why I was invited out here was to articulate that and figure out how we can take some next steps together. So appreciate all your time, and I look forward to continue to work with you all.
Doc?
So 2 quick things. One is my favorite quote is, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so you got to think big. And that's one aspect. But the second is, every single one of you, if you own a business or you work at a corporation, can actually be part of the acceleration of your entrepreneurial environment, which is through your procurement offices. I think it's the single biggest opportunity is to change the procurement offices from a cost reduction to something that can really drive entrepreneurial activity. So seek out ways that you, in your companies, can actually create or grow businesses through your purchasing.
Thank you, very good point, yes?
And also, seek out ways in your community where you can come together and be part of the innovation ecosystem. A bunch of people raised their hands that said they had invested in businesses. There's a young man over here who's bringing together athletes and musicians to pool their money to invest in businesses. Think about this. Is everyone in this room put up $500 and create an angel network to invest in minority businesses in the underserved communities in Atlanta? You think you can make a difference? I bet you could.
Yeah. Arturo?
Just quickly, I heard a great ideas about connecting. Again, connecting to issues. Let me remind you of this. In less than 30 years, we're expecting to double the demand for food in the world, also in the US. At the same time, the climate change is affecting our farmers. So there are tons of business opportunities there that would make the food supply more sustainable, but also more healthier food, more sustainable food more available. So look at big spots of opportunity in challenges we face.
So what we're actually concluding out of here, that is that you actually in here, gentlemen and ladies, you have the power. You can actually vote with your feet, and you can actually build businesses by how you spend your money. I think that's an excellent end note from you. Thank you so much. We're running out of time. I really don't want to be late. I'm Danish. We are on time. Sorry. So, Doc, thank you so much. David, Jeff, Arturo, John, and Daryl, thank you so much for coming. Woo! Thank you.